All right. Well, good morning, everyone. You're here at Visionality's Building Forward, and my name is Emily. And our two guest stars, I'm so excited to welcome Judy and Lena. And we are talking today about something that Judy, especially, is really passionate about, which is why we invited these two. But something that's really important and hasn't gotten a lot of traction, in my opinion, in our local community. So, we're talking today about the importance of language equity. And Judy, I wanted to kick it straight to you, and we can talk about how we came to this topic and how you discovered that this is something that you're interested in moving forward in the world. So let's talk about the most recent PFE, which is Partnership for Excellence.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I am really excited about this topic. I'm probably more excited about the collaboration that it generates in the commitment to language access and justice. And so for the past 10 or so years, I've been producing the Partnership for Excellence, which is a regional conference, which has been both in person and virtual recently. And that program really brings together social sector leaders from across our region and across all types of agencies. And so for us, we have been thinking about bilingual programming and language justice since Lena, probably since about 2015. And we've been doing some experiments, and mostly my team has been partnering with Lena's team at Bridging Voices, Uniendo Voces, and have really built an incredible partnership in order to advance this. So we'd love to talk about it more with you today.
Very much. I was just so impressed at PFE. We do a lot of events in collaboration with other organizations, and there is a wish to make events more language inclusive. But what was so deeply impressive to me is that you guys did it all the way, and you did it in an inclusive way, and you did it because it's the right thing to do, and it's the way we need to move our industry forward, not because of the numbers, right? So talk to me about that. What was the process? It sounds like the funders who fund PFE were just like committed to it. They were ready to go. They were ready to jump in like feet first.
Well, I would say we led them to the water's edge, right? I mean, this commitment came out of the planning and steering committees over years and from engagement with our community. So seeing how more organizations in their programming were offering in language Spanish programming. And we said, if we're serving the sector and we're inviting people to come who both work with monolingual Spanish speaking persons and are interested in serving them in their work, then we want this, this event that brings together all these people. So we actually, I would say we pitched that to the sponsors to say, we feel like this is an important direction for us to take. And that, I don't know, Emily, to your point, that we wanted to make a commitment to it, that we didn't want to say like, oh, let's try that. So starting in 2017, when we brought in Lena's team to do live interpretation, we said from now forward, we will build this into the Partnership for Excellence. So that was a bit freeing to be able to say, we're going to do this forward, so that we weren't every year having to reconsider, should we do this, under what conditions, who's interested, how many people are going to participate. We just said, this is part of the offering that we want to make to community.
Well, and it was a partnership between PFE and Bridging Voices. So Lena, let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about what that partnership means, because it wasn't, y'all co-developed the language equity and justice for PFE, which seems like the most equitable way to do it. And, it seems like a really smart way. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I just have to say, if you have not met Judy Hawkins, this is the one person you say yes to, no matter what. She's like, we're going to have a conference on a mountaintop. Okay, Judy, you got it. So I think, what I really have appreciated about this partnership, and something that we'll talk about is sometimes, organizations or even just in program, people feel really overwhelmed. If we don't do everything language, then we can't do it at all. And I think that, there's a lot to consider and think about. Obviously, we'll talk about capacity and funding, but when we first started the partnership, it started with an in-person event. And I think at that time we had one breakout session that was Spanish to English. We had this full team. It was something just unbelievable to see all these interpreters. I think we had a team of 7 to 10, something like that, all in Black. I still have this picture. And I think one of the most powerful things I remember from that year was going up on stage and having folks who were on the steering committee, on the planning committee, deliver an introduction in Spanish and really welcome and value. And so that was, one piece of it. Then, of course, we have to scrap everything we know about in person because pandemic happens. And, it's great that although there are some limitations, you also have tools available to do this online. So you have to rethink everything. And once we thought we had it handled online, now we're back in person. And now we're, dealing with additional, just the things that come up in planning any event. So I think that in terms of co-creating, it's been wonderful to have a partner like Judy who asks all the questions. I mean, already just in what she does for Partnership for Excellence, it's so well organized. So to come into that and be able to say, oh, what about this, right? Or what about this? And how we considered what this might look like. And it can change a lot of things. It can change, for example, oh, you want to have breakouts? Great. So we would need an interpreter in every breakout, or, you want to hand out these materials. Great. Well, we're going to have those translated. But in the end, I think what it has been is each year is a lesson. Each year we grow from the year before. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway is it didn't have to be all or nothing. And there's a transparency that says, we're working on it. Mm-hmm. And, we welcome the feedback from participants. And I think that's why we are where we are. But it's a transparency that it may not all be here yet. And there's a goal. And that's, I think, for me, the biggest lesson.
So how do organizations know that it's time for them to start tackling this? How do we know if it's right for our own organization?
I think that, really sitting down to look at the organization's mission and vision, values is a really great place to start. A few years ago, a lot of organizations were really scrambling, and I say that in the nicest of terms, to come up with a diversity statement, right? This is post George Floyd. And there's a lot to consider and think about, I feel, with those diversity statements or equity statements. And language is one of them. So I think sitting down to have a conversation with board and staff and leadership and thinking about, does this make sense for us, right? If we're offering direct services and we look at our community, we look at our demographics, are we really reaching everybody that we want? And if the answer is no, then what are the steps that we need to take in order to do that? And then there's organizations that, maybe don't necessarily need to be providing multilingual programming or they're not there yet, but they could be allies to the work. So I think it really comes down to what is the purpose of the organization and the mission and vision. And does it make sense that, they're doing it directly or maybe funding it for Partnership for Excellence?
I love that. Love that. So what does it take to do this kind of stuff? So maybe think back about even before the first PFE that y'all worked on language equity, when did you know, Judy, that like, yes, this is the thing that we need to do next? How did you connect with Lena, and like, take me through that whole process from the beginning.
Gosh, you're drawing me back into the past. Let me think. So, Lena and I worked together through some community-based work that we did through Just Communities. And that's how we met. And so when she established her business and really looked to focus on language justice, I knew that there was somebody out there doing this work, somebody that I trusted, somebody that I knew operates with an incredibly high integrity, and somebody that I knew that had expertise that I did not have for something that I wanted to do, right? So the Partnership for Excellence operates with a planning committee, a steering committee of a variety of community members that basically help to determine the topics and the layout and the format for the day. And so it came as just really a strong, I won't say a mandate, but it was just a really strong intention from that group. That, like I said, so many years ago, that this was important for the Partnership for Excellence, that what Lena just said, when we sat down and looked at our mission, vision, and values, we wanted and needed to be doing this work. And so I just started having conversations, what would this look like? She was willing to build a team even before, as she was building her own business, to be able to do this. And I would say the step through is first about the commitment, and then it's really about looking at these aspects of your event planning where you're going to need to be thinking about. And so I think about it from the standpoint of, of planning, of materials, and of promotions, right? And so when you want to make sure that you are addressing all of those arenas in language. So I did a lot of, kind of bringing into my plans and saying like, well, here's how I do PFE. Where do we need to be thinking about language justice? And there were all kinds of things that popped up, where I would realize like, our website. So what is that going to look like? Are we going to have a translate option, or are we going to have we had a parallel website in Spanish. So you could see every feature, you could see all the information, and it wasn't a click to Google Translate. Her team did that. So it was all, sensitively translated. Every piece of information, that we thought to put out, right? Again, this is getting up to the present day, but, e-blasts and messages, if we had a registration form that needed to be in both languages, replies to the registration form. So online, if you're asking questions, of offering people information. So it's that interface, really looking, it's like following each channel to the end and saying, have we provided this language access to the through point.
Well, and I think too, like, you put a lot of focus on reducing the burden of that. So if I go through the registration process in Spanish, my reply email, my confirmation email is going to be in Spanish. I don't need to click the English email and say, show me this in Spanish. So that was one like big takeaway that I heard. The other big takeaway is Google Translate. No. Don't do that. Please don't do that. And so I think that is kind of speaks to, we're not just translating or interpreting. Your commitment was to language justice, which is very different than like checking that box of like, well, we have the Google Translate button on our website, so we did it. So talk to me about that.
I attended Partnership for Excellence way before that we got into this partnership, and something that I always have in the back of my mind when I go to a conference is, do I feel like I belong here? And there's something to say about, inclusivity, and it can be there, but actually feeling, yes, I feel comfortable here. So that's something that I always carry with me into these kind of partnerships, because it can't just be, honestly, I feel like the day of the interpretation is the last thing that we worry about. It's like the easy part, I suppose, if you have a good team. It's really leading up to it, and having a partner like Judy and the committee, to be willing to listen when we, talk about, okay, so this is awesome wordplay, but it's not going to translate the way that you're intending it in English. And so you're kind of missing a piece here if you're trying to get a humor aspect across, or just everything down to bathroom signs, down to the menu, which was a new one for us this year, and when we think about it, it's not so much just for the Spanish, right? Or for any other language, because that's the next challenge. There are many more languages in our community. But it's really just about equity. And we're not going to be able to reach all of our audiences in the same way. So one of the things that comes up, in this conversation is often cost, right? Cost. And yes, and everything costs money, right? The venues cost money, the programs, the printing, etc. So it's not this thing that exists in silo. If I feel like, back to that original question, if organizations and programs really, really want to be centered in equity, then language justice is social justice. It is part of why we're coming together and having these conversations. And beyond the technical pieces of, well, how does the equipment work, or who's going to hand them out, things like that. Like, we'll handle that, like I said, day of. That's kind of the easy part. It's everything leading up to, and just being willing to be open-minded that things might change, schedules might change. If you were going to have programs to the printer 2 weeks before, now it's going to change because we have to have it to the translator before that. So it really is just about, I think, being open-minded to new processes or culture change at the organization altogether.
Well, and it's intimidating. Making a commitment to language equity is intimidating because it is not easy and it is not cheap. And so, Judy, I loved what you said, where many years ago, y'all made a commitment that we're driving here and we're not going to get here this year, but that's the direction we're headed. And then when you had moments of decisions over the years, you were able to decide to lean in to language justice. And I think that is really helpful, because there is, speaking as a business owner who has not embarked on a language justice journey, it's intimidating. And so just having the space to say we're not there yet, and we're going here, and we're here to learn and empower experts to help us move down this path.
Yeah. And you will make mistakes. I mean, if you're wondering what it's like to make equity mistakes, you will make them. You will get that feeling. You will have that experience. Right. I mean, I wish I had great examples for you, but one that I particularly remember from, I think it was that big program, Lena, that we did in 2017. And we did something with these different words that represented leadership. And one of his team came to me and said, where did that word come from? Like, that's not the right word for courage. Where did that? And it was, it was on this poster, it was printed. It was like, we couldn't even take it down for the day. It was part of how people were organizing themselves, right? So there's things that you do, I think, shortcuts that we probably took in the beginning, not recognizing that they were shortcuts. And as you're building and seeing, I see more than I used to see, right? Both about how we want to be and what people's experience. And so for me, as the producer, I just keep centering hospitality. like hospitality and belonging. So how are we really creating a foundational space that says, you are welcome here, in language. So at this point, you are welcome here, as a Spanish speaker. What can I do in planning and the space building to, have you feel that? And a big opening for me, I know personally, was seeing that lens of language preference. And that's something that this team really helped me to see, is that it's not, it's not just about saying, are we providing a service for people who are monolingual Spanish and or learning English. It's about people who are fully established, leaders, collaborators, and contributors in our community that prefer to learn in their native language, prefer to be in conversation in native language. And so that's a different holding for me. And that comes more from a place of hospitality and belonging than it comes from delivering a service at our event. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it so much. And Judy, you mentioned that there were stumbling blocks, and Delaney on our team likes to talk about the first pancake. The first pancake is never perfect, but like they get better. The second pancake's better. And so I think sort of leaning into this first pancake approach of language justice, I think is really empowering. Lena, I wanted to ask you, we are the queens of the universe, and we have done it. We have reached language equity, right? We're done. Yay, us. What does it look like?
It's a world where you get to walk around and feel like you belong everywhere you go. It can be at the city hall, right? At a city council meeting. It can be at a school event. It can be at the symphony. And we've done work with the symphony with language justice, right? So because that's the reality. I mean, it exists everywhere in all of our lives. And I love what you said, right? Because it's what Judy mentioned, like it's not just am I a monolingual speaker, or am I limited English proficient, which has its own, that's a deficit model. There are just times where I wake up and I function in Spanish, and I take my mom as an example. Amazing woman, has been in this country for over 30 years, has learned English, has a master's degree, and she had to do that in English. But in her heart, she will always speak Spanish. And there are just things, when she's processing, when she's thinking, she'll want to do that in Spanish. And that's kind of like the audience member that I have in mind. So what it looks like is just being able to go anywhere, I think, and not be embarrassed, and not worry, and not fear for yourself in wanting to use that language. And that, I mean, that would be an amazing thing to have, right? Anywhere you go.
Well, it's showing up as our full self, right? If my full self is the most comfortable and the most vulnerable and the most powerful in my native language, but I'm forced to operate, even if I'm proficient, but it's not allowing us to bring our full selves into the world. I love it. Let's talk about evaluation. And Judy, this is one of my favorite things about this partnership that you guys have built with, your measure of success on language equity and justice is not the number of people who say yes to having headsets. So talk to me about the way that you guys measure success, and even what that conversation was like with the funders, right? Because funders want to know the impact.
It highlights that we are very focused on outputs, right? We're focused on how many people used that service. Was that investment worth it? And so I think that our, as a community, our older language are those questions, right? Like how many people signed up, how many people attended, how many people used that service, did they find it useful, right? And what we're learning, I think really as we advance an equity lens, all of us, what we're learning is like those questions are not useful, right? Those questions don't speak to lived experience. Those questions don't speak to building both building a service and or building that community that Lena just spoke about, right? That vision, right? And so we did get those questions, early on. How many, we've got a bank of headsets. How many of those headsets got used? And we reported those numbers. And then that turned into, then why are we doing this if we only have, this many people, if we only have a handful of people using it? And so even being in the exchange, with our generous sponsor group helped us to see, oh, wait, is this what we're tracking? Are we tracking uses? No, actually, we're not tracking uses. We're looking to create an environment of belonging. We're looking to create an environment of welcome. And so that has led us more, to say like, that's not what we're up to. That's not what we're trying to, the impact that we're and recognizing, you spoke to this, Emily, but this is a progressive trajectory. Like that if you decide to make this commitment and do a program in 2 or more languages, you're not suddenly going to get a whole nother community of folks showing up at an event where they haven't had that access before and they don't know who you are and they're not a felt part of your community. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another misconception, honestly, that we worked through was, so if we're just, we're sort of suddenly offering things, bilingual materials. So, now we're going to get, now we're going to have all these Spanish speaking and bilingual participants. That doesn't happen either because we
did it. I love that so much. Well, so our jam, we cover a big topic in 25 minutes. So we've reached our 25 minutes. I have one more question that I'm very interested in, but I want to open it up to everybody. Put a question in the chat. Share some lived experience. You can raise your hand and you can come on camera and talk directly with our guest stars. So my question is, do you have a sense, what kind of technology is coming out to help us bridge language justice and equity? Like, it seems like this is something that technology could help us advance. So I'm just curious if you've started exploring that and what it looks like, what it is.
I think there's a couple of options, in terms of the interpretation itself. We're going to go back old school to in-person, right? We have interpretation equipment that's available and it's wireless. And short of like 2 places that I've been to in Santa Barbara County where it just absolutely didn't work, everywhere else seems to function. But that of course takes, part of the planning time. But and again, that's not new, right? Folks already do walkthroughs and then, with everybody hopping on Zoom over the last few years, Zoom has a platform for interpretation. Teams has a platform for interpretation. If you don't have that available, we can talk through it. And that's I think for me, one of the joys of this work is that it's not set in stone. I mean, there are many things that folks are just discovering as they go, creating as they go. So we can, work through that. And I just want to add to what Judy said earlier before our 25 minutes are up. But I think with language justice, it's really about reframing the thinking. And yeah, I love that, because if this program or any program has been offered in English only for so many years, to think that, the 1 year we have Spanish available, everybody's going to flock to it when they don't know what it is, what it, entails. we make a lot of assumptions, right? Just because it's there, organizations can afford to send people, things like that. And so really not thinking numbers wise, but thinking impact and how does it folks feel? And, what changes about organizations wanting to participate? So I don't think it's about, the interest of the community or organizations. It's about, do we have the structures in place to make sure that we are ready to receive all these new organizations and faces. And so that takes a lot of reframing of what is. And I think Dea, Judy and I were having a great conversation outside, and she mentioned, you don't count how many people go into an ADA bathroom, for example. You don't count how many people use a gender neutral restroom, right? You don't count how many people took the vegan option. So why would you count how many people took the headsets? It's just, why quantify that and not everything else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and it's in line with our mission, vision, values. Yeah, thank you so much.
We do it because we're inspired to do it.
Yeah. Judy, can you elaborate just a little bit for us on the organizational side, like what it actually took to make this lift?
Yeah, thank you, Emily. I wanted to speak to that a little bit, just in terms of the the reality of it takes a partner like Bridging Voices to be able to walk through the planning process with you. It takes a recognition that everything that you're doing is going to take more time. Like she alluded to. So and I'm gonna estimate that you probably need at least 30% more time around all of your communications elements, right? Like anything that you're doing that is going to go out to the public and support the public to connect with your event, and that the cost is going to parallel that as well. 30 to 40% more money in order to be able to bring in the team, pay for the materials translation, do the, additional coordinating to be a partner in that partnership. So I just wanted to make that real too, because there are, I sort of feel like we slid on costs, but they're there, and it's an integral part of making this commitment.
Thank you so much. Well, and money is real, right? Like, so it's really important to address, and especially as nonprofits, we need to have the tools to inform our board or our decision makers or our funders on why it's critical and in line with our mission, vision, values. And yeah, it's going to cost something, and here's what we think it's going to cost. And let's build that in. Let's ramp that up over the next 3 to 5 years, right? So we're not bearing the 30 to 40% increase in time and money in year one, but we know that's where we're going, and we're going to take the right steps to get there.
And you may have particular funders and donors who are really interested in helping you advance equity. And that's where they will be, interested and engaged in stepping forward. And we had that early at PFE too. We had, particular funders who really wanted to help us say yes to setting that groundwork. And so I would, imagine that there are more folks around now who are really committed to that agenda.
Yeah, so it could even be like a very specific sponsorship opportunity to say, our big stretch goal for language justice is X dollars, please join us and contribute all or part of that to bring language justice. And then it's like, the language equity is sponsored by Judy Hawkins.
But I would say too that we got to reframe and not think about it as its own thing, right? Because if we're just focusing on equity, then this is equity. So we see it as an input, and then we look at what's our short-term goal with the program, right? What's our mid goal, our long-term goal, and that's just one of the inputs. The same way that it is to, increase the amount of visitors we get from different areas, right? Or to change geographically every year. So seeing it as that input is important, because I think it changes the way that we fundraise for it. It changes the way we talk about it, and we embed it as part of, if we want to have a program that focuses on equity across the Central Coast, this is just one of the pieces of the puzzle, much like everything else that goes into programming.
Yes, thank you so much. I love it. Llewellyn has her hand raised, so give me just 1 second. I'm gonna add you to the party. What you got to share?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Judy. Hi, Lena. Nice to meet you, Lena. I'm part of the Visionality team here, and first I wanted to share that I went to PFE many years ago before COVID, and I didn't know you then, Judy, and I had a really like a profound experience there where I learned what you guys were sharing about how language is not just about access to translation, that it's about power and about power holding and power sharing. There was translation services at that PFE, and I remember there was this moment where we were in a really large group, and like a question was posed to the group, and a man in the group answered, and he just went straight into Spanish for his answer. And I speak a decent amount of Spanish, but I'm not a native speaker. But what he shared was something personal and a bit emotional. And I felt his response more deeply because it was in Spanish, because I could tell that that's how he was able to convey what he wanted to say. And it was just like a really eye-opening experience for me about how this isn't just about translation. It's about feeling comfortable and being your true self. So I wanted to share that, but I also wanted to ask about sort of this this challenge for nonprofits who are wanting to do this work, and how the results, the quote unquote results, don't show up in the first year, and how I'm curious to know, like, in your experiences when you've been able to do this work year after year after year with PFE or maybe with other organizations, like if you could share what that like trajectory has looked like, because I'm like trying to take this awesome information and think about it in terms of how to like help our nonprofits, like quote unquote sell this, right? Like sell this to the stakeholders that they have to talk to, and how they can like be able to be effective in making sure that like they're heard about the importance of this.
You want to start, Judy? Yeah, I thank you so much for sharing that story, because that is language justice. I think to be able to have somebody gift you themselves from their heart is that's what it is at the end of the day, right? And thinking about what your question is, if we really look at equity, and again, language justice is just part of that, right? It's really selling the funders on, there are some things that are going to change. So for example, if we typically just reach out to our stakeholders via email, and we're not getting folks, who are monolingual Spanish speakers, bilingual folks, other languages, then we have to ask ourselves why. And it's not because they don't want to be here. It's not because they don't care. It's because we have to find different ways to reach folks. And so the events where I've seen, a true, like, wonderful conversations happening, people are wearing headsets and you'd never know because they're just talking, they're looking at each other, is because organizations have taken the time to say, okay, so what is the best way to reach different communities? Is it radio? Is it Facebook? Is it phone calls? Which it is for a lot of them. It's just, doing that personal outreach and saying, hi, this is like Lena, and I really want to invite you personally to come to Partnership for Excellence. What is it? Let me tell you, right? And why you should be here, because you are part of the nonprofit community or whatever it is. And so really taking the time to look at all of that is equity, because it's not a one size fits all model. And that's not how we're going to reach folks, right? It's really about looking at our communities, about ways to communicate. Sometimes it's not even written. Sometimes it has to be video or audio only. that's going to reach the audience. So that for me is something to really consider in terms of, yeah, I don't know that the first year it's going to be, people lining up at the door, but it shouldn't deter us from stopping and evaluating the why the same way we evaluate the entire program, right? If you see a sandwich platter that was not eaten, you would look at it and say, like, I wonder why people didn't eat the tuna, right? No offense to tuna, but you would evaluate it and you'd say, well, maybe people don't want, fishy bread during a conference. So you would do the same for this. Like, what happened? Why, how did we reach out? Where did we not do it? And then just, keep improving that for years. And I've seen that with schools, with organizations, with programming that have really taken that to heart and keep moving forward, as opposed to just saying like, nope, see, it didn't work. We're done.
Yeah.
When it's that first pancake approach, right? If every pancake that you're making is perfect, then maybe you're not evolving, maybe you're not sort of pushing that pancake envelope. Yeah. Thank you so much, Judy. I do want to give you a kudos. PFE has become a not negotiable opportunity for our team every year. And it is such a powerful moment, yes, to do continuing education and to learn like hard skills about our industry, but also just to be surrounded with people who are fighting the same fight as us and, know what it feels like to work in a nonprofit. And it's been really meaningful in shaping the way that Visionality has moved through the years. So I just want to thank you, Judy, personally for making this such an incredible moment for our industry. And that is exactly like partnering with Lena and saying like, we built something really strong and powerful that is deeply impacting our industry, and we need to make sure that that can reach as many people as possible. And in the point of PFE is for us to show up as our full selves and get seen and heard and appreciated as our full self, and that includes language justice and equity. So I'm just like so delighted that I get to share some time with both of you, because you truly have impacted me and my team and my company. And so I'm just very proud of y'all. Other questions for our experts, other lived experiences that you want to share? Is anyone on a language justice journey that you want to maybe ask some questions about, or share some successes, or some maybe first pancake moments? I want to just make a little bit of space for people to be brave and raise that hand or put it in the chat. So to buy us a little time, I'm hoping someone else will join us. So if you're feeling it in your heart, just do it. So Lena, you have very generously offered something to our attendees. And so share with us. We're going to do a little giveaway. So Delaney, this is your cue to get ready. What are we raffling off today?
So I think, as we talked about early on, it can be very intimidating to look at language justice and just say, so what is it? How do we start? Is it even, for us? So what I would like to offer are 2 hours of consulting on language justice. And that can really be, if folks are already in it, it can be about an upcoming event or, communications. If folks are just thinking about it, anything like that. So that is part of the work, right? As we said, it's not just the service of interpretation and translation. Those are great tools, but part of it is just the consulting as well and working with folks. So I am very excited to share that with you all, and I hope somebody that wins is really excited too.
Yeah. So Delaney, are you ready to do our magic?
I am ready. Yep.
Okie.
So it looks like there's 4 people, so have outside of our organization.
Ooh.
Oh,
All right,
okay,
Melissa. Melissa, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm quite jealous. So I would actually love to hear what you guys talk about and you know how you might consider using your time and stuff. And Lena, thank you so much. This is a really exciting and generous offer. So we have two more comments in the chat. So Lauren says, I'm with the Ventura County Community Foundation. Love it. And we've been doing work for our highest quality early childhood education initiative in both English and Spanish for our in-person and Zoom meetings. Definitely a lot of learning moments over the last year. That means you're doing something right. If you're stumbling a little, it means you're actually trying something new, which is scary, but good work. So proud of you guys. Nice work. Letty says, I have worked with Lena at a previous employment. I am now at Radiant Health Centers. Excellent.
I just want to shout out Leti Alvarez because oftentimes in this work, what you need is a champion. And that is a true champion for many things, but particularly language justice. I think, especially at a time where the words I don't think were even recognized and we were just still doing awareness and not so much work. So thanks for being here, Leti.
Thank you. I saw this on LinkedIn and I thought, oh, I need to reconnect. And as I mentioned in the chat, and we thought we were doing everything correct. And then when we had just communities come in and do a staff training, I was like, oh my gosh, I was not doing it even halfway correct. And now I'm here at Radiant Health in Irvine. And this agency's been around for 30 years and we have very little things bilingual. And so I'm working with Claudia right now to translate many of our handouts. And I met with some a consultant yesterday to get us on board here in Orange County. So lots of work to do here. And I'm so glad that it's continuing. It should be the norm, in my opinion. And yeah, previous to this, I was at the governor's office, and even there, I was having to advocate at the governor's office for not just Spanish, but for Vietnamese, for Korean, for all the languages. And so it's people have to understand it's just not about Spanish. It's about the norm.
Yeah.
I think we should not feel we're doing something special.
Oh, I love that.
That's where I'm at with this at this point. You know, it's been, you know, gosh, 15 years at least, Lena. This should just be the norm. It should, I should not feel I'm doing something special. And so I really enjoyed the dialogue that we're coming there, we're getting there. So thank you.
Well, and what I love is you're planting seeds now. You have become, right, and I know that at whatever organization you're at, you're going to plant those seeds, and like maybe the trees are going to grow big and strong and maybe they're not, but like there's not going to be any trees if we don't start planting the seeds. And we all have an opportunity to like carry that in and bring it into the different avenues of our work, just to start planting the seeds. And maybe they won't take, but we got to plant them.
Yes, and that was kind of the example when I met with the finding the budget for all this translation and proper interpretation. And I looked at my boss and I said 60% of our patients, our clients are Latinx. And we have 1% of materials in Spanish. And they were given an example where a young girl went to our table. Our population is LGBTQ and HIV, AIDS positive. And they said a young girl went to the table. She didn't want her mom to see her at our table, but she wanted to know more about LGBTQ. And so she hurried up and grabbed the literature and made sure her mother didn't see her. because she didn't want to be outed. And I said, because we don't have anything in Spanish, our Spanish speakers are coming to the table and are not given the same respect of not being outed. The staff is having to translate right there on the spot from English to Spanish, and people are seeing them at the table and they're being feared that they're being outed. So we're contributing to the Spanish speaking not coming to our table and not receiving services. So it's not about just language justice, it's about equity, access to healthcare, access to mental health services. And so when I gave it to them in that context that we're outing Spanish speakers or we're depriving them of service, then they found me the budget, and now I have the budget. So it's more than having the materials. It's about not outing people because they don't have access. I had to tell them the story at their level. Don't out the young girl, don't out the Spanish speakers.
Well, you shifted it away from language equity and into the mission of your organization, right? You made it not negotiable. If we're achieving our mission, this is a piece of our mission, because you would never write in your mission statement, we're okay with outing our clients, right? So nice work. Nice work.
Thank you.
All right, Jeanette, I see your hand raised. Welcome to the party, Jeanette.
Thank you. I'm excited to see how this can impact our school system and children and their families at a really young age. I think we have come a long way, but in the schools, it's still a special program. Oh, okay, so a note up. My mom taught in the public school system to native Spanish speakers. And it was a special program, and they did feel that sense of belonging, and there was that community that they all felt with the food and the language and the sharing. But that was a special program, and I'd like to see a day where we can enter the school system and you're not outed or you don't feel different because you speak Spanish. In my situation, it was a long time ago when I entered the school system, but my parents, both being Spanish speakers, bilingual, and from native Spanish speaking families, did not want us to learn Spanish as our first language because of the perception that we would have in the school system, and because the educators were not informed or educated on how to teach Spanish speakers, so we would be behind in the education we receive. So I think this is exciting, and I look forward to that when children can learn at that young age, but also their families who don't feel like they belong when they go to, school events or back to school nights. And I really appreciate your work on this.
We could have a whole other conversation, Jeanette, because what you're talking about is so important. That is one of our areas of focus, is education. And what you mentioned, and thank you for sharing that story, because it's painful, right, to have part of you be on hold because it's not, and we see that still. We see this with families who will not check off Spanish as a home language in fear that their student will not receive, the same education. And then just, as a parent myself too, there's so many important things, particularly special education meetings, IEPs, 504s, and to just be in that space and think, is this English? I don't know if I understand it in English. What does that look like across languages, across differences of culture, and just, so it's such an important conversation to have, and a lot of great people doing work in education around language.
Yeah, thank you so much. Last call for questions of our guest stars, and last call for lived experience. Thank you so much for your hard work, for your impact in our community. Thank you for joining us and giving generously of your time, effort, and energy. I just really appreciate you both. Keep it up. It's hard work and it's important.
Thank you so much for the invitation. And you know, these conversations are where the work is blooming also, right? Where we're learning from each other, where we're hearing about each other's approaches and successes. So I hope we'll keep the conversation open.
Wonderful. And we'll include everyone's information in the follow-up email. So don't worry about that. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Bye.